All right, should we get started?
Sounds good.
Wanda,
Yes. Hi,
hi, how are you?
Kathleen.
It's been a long time, many years.
Yes, it's been
You.
a while.
Yeah,
Good to see you.
good.
Well, I'll get us started this evening. I'm just really pleased that we're able to offer this Veteran Verses project with our poetry workshop. And we have the illustrious poet laureate, Rosemary Dombrowski, and she is the inaugural poet laureate of Phoenix, Arizona, the founding editor of Rinky Dink Press, which is an independent publisher of poetry, and the director of Revisionary Arts, a nonprofit that facilitates therapeutic poetry workshops for vulnerable populations and the community at large, which I believe veterans are considered a vulnerable population.
Mhm.
Rosemary was the co-founder and faculty editor of Write On Downtown from 2007 to 2022, an annual publication dedicated to showcasing the work of Phoenix creatives. And this is the best part. She's currently the founding editor of Issued, Stories of Service, an ASU-sponsored journal of creative expression by veterans and military-affiliated people. And I would just tell you, if you don't have a copy of this beautiful little book, please put in the chat and we'll try to make sure you get a copy. And as well, she's a faculty editor of Gray Matter, the medical poetry journal at the University of Arizona College of Medicine in Phoenix. And so we welcome Rosemary to our group. Thank you so much, Rosemary, for doing this for us. And I give the floor to you.
Thank you so much for sponsoring these workshops, Wanda, Stacy. I so appreciate your ongoing support. And Wanda was just referring to the print copy of Issued, which is our new military-focused journal at ASU. That should be coming to you soon in the mail if you give either Stacy or Wanda your snail mail address. But in the meantime, the website just went live this week, so we have not even been able to share that with our contributors yet. Exactly. We just finished it yesterday, so I will go ahead and give everybody the link to that right now so that you can pull it up on your screen and save it. It's issuedjournal.com. And so all of the content from our inaugural issue is there. So there's poetry by veterans, there's short pieces of prose by veterans, and then there's a really nice selection of profiles of veterans who are doing extraordinary work through nonprofits, in mental health, in higher education. So take a look, poke around, see if you might want to think about submitting for the upcoming 2024 issue. All the submission information is there on the website as well. So maybe somebody will be inspired tonight, and something that we talk about or something that we start writing tonight will become a piece that you would like to submit. So we'd love to hear from you. And feel free to share that with any of your friends who are military affiliated as well. With that, I will share my screen and get started. Everybody's got a good visual here. I know that view is distracting to some people, so I will go ahead and put it in. And see, I don't like this view. I'll go ahead and put it in full screen view for everybody. Again, I'm the director of Revisionary Arts, which is essentially a nonprofit that facilitates poetry workshops. And we work across medical spaces, non-medical spaces, medically vulnerable populations, socially vulnerable populations. And we've been working with veterans for a little bit over a year now. So very excited to be back sponsoring another workshop at ASU. Wanda already did a great job of introducing me, so I will just quickly point you to the Revisionary Arts website if you would like to learn more about what we do as a nonprofit and the other spaces that we work in. Feel free, and I already gave you the website for Issued, our new military-focused journal at ASU, so nothing else there is needed. We are going to discuss 3 fantastic poems tonight. And if any of them elicits a strong reaction from you and you need to take a break, you can turn off your camera. You don't have to participate verbally. Sharing is always optional. If you feel comfortable typing in the chat room at some point, that's great. If you'd rather, sort of raise your hand or unmic yourself, that's okay too. But if you need a break, please do take it. Take care of yourself first and foremost. And with that, we will get started. So the first question I like to answer before we really dive into the poetry is, what is poetry? For people who might be in this workshop and have never written a poem, or maybe haven't read a poem in a really long time. Poetry, for me, has always just been a means of concisely and honestly expressing yourself. And I say concisely because it's a small container, right? Poetry exists in a small container. And so for me, that's always meant it's less intimidating. I know a lot of people think it's more intimidating because they don't know what's supposed to go in that container. Honest expression. That's what you can put in that container always. It has really very little to do with rhyme or meter or form in the 21st century. And in this space, it has almost nothing to do with those things. It's just about how you need to express yourself and how you want to express yourself. And certainly you can bring all your creative juices to bear on any of these exercises tonight, but you don't need to feel the need to contrive anything. Just be yourselves and be authentic. I'm going to introduce a very short poem by our first author, James Wright, who won a Pulitzer for poetry in 1972. And he was also a veteran of the US Army. It's called Trying to Pray. This time, I have left my body behind me, crying in its dark thorns. Still, there are good things in this world. It is dusk. It is the good darkness of women's hands that touch loaves. The spirit of a tree begins to move. I touch leaves. I close my eyes and think of water. I'll return to the poem in a second, but in the spirit of this opening poem, I'd love it if we could all try to ease ourselves into this space, which may be new and awkward for some people, by writing a 6-word prayer or meditation. It can address things that you need, things that comfort you, things that you're grateful for. Whatever you need to be housed in a 6-word prayer or meditation tonight, it's up to you. So I will give everybody about 2 minutes to do that. And I can go back to James Wright's poem for inspiration if you'd like as well. And it's okay if you need 8 words or 10 words, but you don't have to write more than 6. A few seconds left. Just because there's a little bit of background noise, if people wouldn't mind muting themselves until they're ready to speak, that would be great. I probably have background noise in my house too. You probably heard a cat meow. Just sorry about that. this could be the most intensely personal thing that you write all night. So I understand if you have reticence to share, but if somebody would like to share, please let me know and we can have a couple minutes of sharing before we move on. Wanda, thank you.
I'll try to get it started so people can kind of warm up to this, but
That's great.
um,
Thank
I
you.
I did a little few more than 6 words, but not too many more. The garden brings life and joy through my hard work.
Oh, I love that. And it's almost that time of year, isn't it, for planting?
Yes.
Yes. I have a friend who's a master gardener. She loves fall. That's beautiful. Thank you. Would anyone else like to share their prayer, meditation?
Rosemary, it's Chris. Once again, I
Chris?
wanted to thank you for bringing up issued. As the original contributor, I see the changes and it's really terrific. So thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. Yes, Chris is one of our
Bring the
pros
pleasant
contributors.
and
I'm so sorry that I talked over you. I just wanted to say Chris was one of our original contributors in the inaugural issue.
So I was just writing a few thoughts, just a quick thought here, Rosemary. Bring the pleasant and the feeling of joy beyond trial.
I love it. Empathy. That's a wonderful one too. Thank you for sharing that, Chris. I'm looking through. Rocky, is your hand up? Would you like to share? Oh, I can't hear you. It doesn't look like you're muted, but I'm not getting any sound. Now you're muted. You should be unmuted. Can anybody hear Rocky? I cannot hear Rocky. No, nobody can hear you. It could be the volume. No. If you can't get it to work, feel free to put your 6 words in the chat room and I will read them aloud for you. Would anybody else like to share in the meantime? I have one from Jessica. If I'm breathing in with fear, exhale with courage. Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I have another one from Hannah. Better futures start in my dreams. Another great one. Thank you both so much. Rocky, we will certainly come back to you. In the meantime, I will talk just a little bit about what narrative medicine is, because that's really what we're practicing tonight. And that might be new terminology for a lot of people. It hasn't been a part of our vernacular for very long, I don't think. What we're practicing tonight is a type of narrative medicine, though. And I specifically use poetry as my portal, so I call it poetic medicine. So we're using poetry as a portal to deeper observation and reflection, which may have already been evidenced through that first short activity. We also use poetry as a portal just to reclaim our narratives. Remember what I said about poetry in the beginning. It doesn't have to be extraordinarily creative. It just has to fit in that small container and be authentic. So that means it's an opportunity for us to tell a narrative about ourselves or the world that we live in the way that we want to tell it. Certainly when we read poetry and oftentimes when we write it, we're using it to process our emotions. And sometimes those emotions are heavy. Illness, grief, trauma, those are themes that come up over and over again in poetry. And I think as poets, we always sort of gravitate towards the sanctity that space, the safety of a poem when we want to wade through our grief or trauma. Obviously, we also use poetry in spaces like this to connect to each other and to forge community and to find a common language. And that could be a common language of suffering, could be a common language of joy, just a common language of humanity. And last but not least, of course, when we're sharing together, when we're discussing texts together, when we're writing and sharing our writing together, we're being seen and heard. And that may be the most important part of it. So that's narrative medicine in a nutshell. It oftentimes in medical spaces is called the act of radical listening. So we will try to radically listen to one another here. And hopefully in the future, you'll have a healthcare practitioner that also practices radical listening. And if they do, it must mean they're familiar with narrative medicine. And that's a wonderful thing. Another thing I like to talk about, which comes from a cancer study, is that poetry and metaphors in particular really do force us, teach us how to reframe the tragedies and the illnesses in our lives. You don't just get to say cancer sucks when you're writing a poem. You have to say something else about it, right? You don't just get to say loss sucks. You have to say something. You have to forge a new relationship to that hardship. And so metaphors are oftentimes used with cancer patients to help them reframe that journey, to help them find a new language, to help them forge a new relationship. And then we talk about this with physicians and future physicians at the med school all the time. Poetry teaches us how to sit with uncertainty. And that could just be because sometimes when we read a poem, we're thinking, I don't really know what that means. Don't really know what I'm supposed to do with that. Well, if you read enough poetry, you get comfortable with that feeling of uncertainty. And I think obviously when we're faced with illnesses, trauma, if we work in medical spaces, if we are adjacent to medical spaces, there are going to be many times when we have to sit with uncertainty. It's uncomfortable, but if poetry can prepare us for that in some way, why not? Why not? So here's a poem that I have recently found and incorporated into what we call a poetry pharmacy. And it's one of my favorites. So I wanted to share it with you tonight. It's called Ask Me by William Stafford. Sometime when the river is ice, ask me what mistakes I have made. Ask me whether what I have done is my life. Others have come in their slow way into my thought, and some have tried to help or hurt. Ask me what difference their strongest love or hate has made. I will listen to what you say. You and I can turn and look at the silent river and wait. We know the current is there, hidden. And there are comings and goings from miles away that hold the stillness exactly before us. What the river says, that is what I say. My question for you, before we do anything else, is would anybody else like to read this poem aloud? Would anybody else like to read it aloud? In their voice?
I can read it.
Okay, thank you, Veronica.
Sometime when the river is ice, ask me what mistakes I have made. Ask me whether what I have done is my life. Others have come in their slow way into my thought, and some have tried to help or to hurt. Ask me what difference their strongest love or hate has made. I will listen to what you say. You and I can turn and look at the silent river and wait. We know the current is there, hidden, and there are comings and goings from miles away that hold the stillness exactly before us. What the river says, that is what I say.
Nicely done. Thank you. So, what resonated with you? Any particular line? Any particular thought? What spoke to you in this poem? Anybody? There's no wrong answer, I promise.
Can you hear me? Or
I can. Hi, Kathleen.
oh,
Thank
you can't hear
you.
me. Okay, good. I was gonna say what I really was attracted to was when he said, "We know the current is there, hidden,
Mhm.
things from miles away." And I think for a lot of us that were kind of frozen in the PTSD and
Mm.
trying to find that hidden current underneath us. And so that
Mm.
because we still have coming and goings miles away that hold the stillness exactly before us. And so what the river says, that is what I say, even though it's hidden. And I thought that was pretty profound.
I love that. I love how you made that metaphor your own. Wow, what a beautiful translation. I love it. The current is there, that movement, that forward movement, that sort of maybe source of life even is there. It's just hidden. And I guess it is our job to find it. And poets oftentimes look into nature, right, in order to see more deeply into themselves. That's what a lot of poetry does. It looks outside in order to better understand what's going on inside. Thank you
It-
so much for sharing that, Kathleen. Yeah,
gonna
go
say-
on, please.
I was going to say another thing that was pretty profound is how he, it says, some have tried to help or hurt. Ask me what difference their strongest love or hate has made.
I know. Yeah.
That was
I love that question. I love it because I wonder what he would say. And then it makes me think, what would I say? What would I say if someone asked me that question? Right. And we may not, I don't have an answer for that right now, but every time I read this poem, I think, what would I say if I sat down to think about that? Is that what you were thinking? Is that what it made you start thinking about? All the different instances, people in your lives, positive, negative.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites in this poem. Thanks for
Yeah.
pointing that out. Anybody else have a favorite line, something that spoke to them?
Hey, Rosemary, it's Yvonne. Can
Hi,
you hear me?
Yvonne. Yeah, I can. Thank you.
Just the first line was says, sometime when the river is ice, ask me. I feel like he's saying, don't ask me anything until like I've gotten hard or something, like my feelings are protected, like I'm frozen. Then you can ask me.
Interesting.
So you
And
can
that,
ask.
I mean, that connects to the current though, right? Because if the river's ice, we can't see the current, but we know it's under there, right? And we know it's hidden. So that connects really beautifully to what Kathleen said about the current being the thing that can take you back to yourself, right? I mean, I'm paraphrasing Kathleen, but that's close, right? The current is the thing that can take you back to yourself. And the ice is maybe, I love what you just said, Yvonne, like the veneer, like the hard exterior that is kind of maybe protecting you, but also maybe keeping you from that current, that movement, that energy inside yourself. Yeah, I mean, that's a deliberate move on the poet's part, right? Sometime when the river is ice, ask me what mistakes I have made. I love that you noticed that.
This is Wanda, and I'll add on to that because I think too, you go from spring to autumn, and it's kind of an age-related thing where, the winter is sort of the declining of life. And it's so also a time of great reflection. As you get older, I think you reflect more on what your life was before. And so when he talks about all the people, and I'm thinking, in time, over time, the people that loved and people that hated, it's reflecting over that time of all these things happening.
That's a great insight. Yeah, the poem is seasonal, just like our lives are seasonal. And winter is a period of loss, right? A period of dormancy. And so there isn't a lot of maybe sources of inspiration in nature. Maybe there are fewer sources of inspiration in nature. And maybe that is why it is a better time for introspection. And also just because it's a time of loss and it's before the rebirth. So we're thinking about maybe how we want to change our lives before the springtime comes and sort of ushers in that rebirth. That's a great reading as well.
There was a response in the chat as well from Jessica. Did you want me to read that or?
Oh, yeah, Stacy, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
In response to the ask me what difference the strongest love or hate has made, she said, it makes me reflect on not only how others have affected me, but how you may be perceived in the eyes of others and the impact you make on others.
Hmm. That's a great one too. It forces us to think about relationships. And those go both ways. Absolutely, I agree. I like the third line too. If no one else is going to point out the third line might be my favorite. Ask me whether what I have done is my life. That's a really loaded one. Not ask me whether what I have done with my life is right. Just ask me whether what I have done is my life. That is profound. Is what we've done our life? Is that how we define ourselves? Maybe we don't have to.
On that, the whole thing for me, can you hear me?
Yes, thanks, Yvonne.
Okay, what the river says, that is what I say. So like from the beginning, I feel like, being protected. Um, I'm, kind of numb. You just protect it, because when the river is ice. And then at the end, whatever the river says, that's what I would say. I feel like that's like when you've gone through so much stuff, you don't even know what you've gone through. You can't find the words for it. So all this experience with the current and all these things that are coming and going, it's like, well, I still don't know what it all means. So whatever the river says, I guess that's what I'm going to say because I'm still trying to figure it out.
I like that because I do think this poem has more questions than answers. And that's got to be the point. That's got to be the point, is that sometimes, it's just about listening. Maybe it's just about listening to the current, listening to the river, listening to ourselves and not having answers. I love that interpretation.
Well, water to me is destructive sometimes, and the river is created by the water and the currents and how, like, so I think that it's really good about life because all the bumps and bruises and the things along the way has kind of created our rivers. And
Sure.
and so what the river says, it's really what has impacted your life. I mean, that's where you carry that along, whatever you have from all the way the currents and all that stuff straight through. So
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's very Colorado River. We are the canyons, right? That is who we are. Life has etched itself onto us. And that's a fantastic metaphor as well.
Can you hear me?
I
Everyone?
can now, Rocky. Nicely
Oh,
done.
I switched devices. I was on my
Okay,
big
good.
desktop.
Well, that's one way to fix a problem, right? Just switch to another device. I like it.
Yeah, funny. If I could give my take on this, I think a lot of times that river is me, and when the river is ice, is when I'm mired up in my frustrations, my anxiety, my depression. And what I have done, I don't know if it's my life. And others come in slow. My wife helps, and my family helps, and doctors help. And I try to decide if that's helping me or hurting me, and what that difference means to me. I do listen to what people say. Sometimes in my way, the ice is so thick that it just doesn't penetrate my depression or my state of mind at that time. I just know that things will be better, as the river runs. And so that's kind of how I see this.
I love that. Yeah, you saw yourself in every line of the poem. That's remarkable. And I guess I would just point out that line, you and I can turn and look at the silent river and wait.
And wait.
Yeah,
wait for it
I
to
love
run,
that.
wait for the ice to break, to melt.
Yep, exactly.
So I, get out of the muck and mire that I'm stuck in.
That's right. And, obviously when there's comings and goings and there's people and there's things and there's all this sort of, impact, there's a little bit of chipping away at that ice, right? I mean, we know that there's a little bit of chipping away, but oftentimes there's a lot of waiting, to get through it, to uncover what's really beneath. And, poetry allows us to do that slowly, right?
Yes, it does.
If you were to write your life in poetry, you can take as much time or as little time as you need. It could be 1,000 poems or it could be 10
right.
poems.
Right.
And so I do love that. I love that poetry allows you to pace these reflections in any way that you need to pace them. That was a beautiful parallelism with your life. I'm glad you changed devices, Rocky. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
I want to make sure everybody's had an opportunity, had the time to comment before we move on. I obviously have another poem for you, and we're going to do a little bit of writing. So I want to make sure that we get there. We don't have all the time in the world tonight, even though poetry would suggest otherwise. So one thing that I wanted to come back to in between the poems is, again, why are we choosing poetry as our form of narrative medicine? Why are we choosing poetry as the portal? I work with dementia patients at the Hospice of the Valley Dementia Campus, work that I absolutely love. And there have been a decent number of studies with dementia patients. This one also happens to be another study with cancer patients, but I'm sure a lot of you have heard about the dementia studies that suggest that music is a wonderful trigger for memories, and that it can help people sort of, find language again, articulate their thoughts more clearly, listening to music. And so this study really impacted me when I first discovered it. It was published in the Journal of Palliative Medicine. And I think we would all assume that passive listening to music improves pain and improves depression. But in this study, they found that passive listening to poetry also improved pain and depression. Basically, they received the same scores across the 60 cancer patients that were part of the study. However, it was only passive listening to poetry that increased their hope scores. And I've always found that so interesting. And maybe it's because when we listen to poetry, we have to hear the words. There isn't anything else. There is no music. There are no notes, right? There are no instruments. There's no guitar that's going to rip through and get in the way of our understanding of those lyrics. And so I agree that music and poetry are both beneficial tools for us to use on the regular to uplift our spirits and improve our mental disposition, maybe even our mental health long term. But the fact that passive listening to poetry increases hope scores, that's a pretty remarkable finding. So that is one of the reasons why I will continue to use poetry. Another really promising study that was published in 2019 in Complementary Therapies in Clinical Practice found that participants in this study who were suffering from trauma showed increased resilience and decreased stress and depression after 6 weeks of intensive poetic expressive writing. So these are clinical trials, and obviously we're not running a clinical trial here, and we're not going to be writing this regularly. But I think to know that poetry is available to us, and to know that these kinds of workshops exist, and for us to be able to plug into them, maybe more often than we have in the past, it can't be a bad thing. It can't be a bad thing. I mean, if this can increase our resilience and decrease our stress and depression, even in small doses, if poetry can do that, why not give it a try, right? So, and that brings me to that web address that I gave you earlier that you may not have paid any attention to, the revisionaryarts.org. My nonprofit sponsors a free workshop like this every third Saturday of the month at 1 p.m. and it's always on Zoom. And if you go to our website, revisionaryarts.org, you can just click on the workshops tab and it'll give you all the information that you need and the link that you need to join those workshops. And we offer them every month on the third Saturday. So please, if you'd like to plug in more frequently, I encourage you to do that. And now we're going to move into our final poem, which is going to lead us into some more writing which I'm excited about. Pat Schneider is a poet and an educator and a spiritual teacher. And I read her book last year, and she's just become a mainstay for me. So this is the final poem that I chose for tonight. It's called Instructions for the Journey by Pat Schneider. The self you leave behind is only a skin you have outgrown. Don't grieve for it. Look to the wet, raw, unfinished self, the one you are becoming. The world, too, sheds its skin. Politicians, cataclysms, ordinary days. It's easy to lose this tenderly unfolding moment. Look for it as if it were the first green blade after a long winter. Listen for it as if it were the first clear tone in a place where dawn is heralded by bells. And if all that fails, wash your own dishes, rinse them, stand in your kitchen at your sink, let cold water run between your fingers. Feel it. And here I've just re-quoted the first few lines from Pat's poem. The self you leave behind is only a skin you have outgrown. Don't grieve for it. Look to the wet, raw, unfinished self, the one you are becoming. So take out your pens, grab your computer, your phone, whatever you're going to write on, and just for a minute or two, in the spirit of this poem, let's spend just a minute or two describing the self you've left behind, whatever comes to mind. Maybe it's a self that you haven't quite left behind yet, but you want to leave it behind. Let's spend about 2 minutes just kind of making a list, dumping out all the things that you want to leave behind. But then we want to spend the remaining time giving your current self a set of instructions for the journey. Because after all, that's what the poem is called, Instructions for the Journey. So I want everybody to at least come up with a list that's a set of instructions that you want to give yourself for the rest of the journey. What instructions would you like to give yourself for the journey? But again, feel free to spend the first minute or two describing the self that you've left behind, because that can be an important part of the process, right? You may not know what the instructions are for your current self if you're still in the process of shedding a former self. So feel free to do it in 2 parts. It could be 2 separate lists. You don't have to necessarily blend them together into one cohesive list or one cohesive poem. Just see what happens.
RD, can you post any of the research, like a link to the research Jessica was asking for?
Sure, yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that while
for
everybody's writing.
the study.
We've got a
Thank you.
good 10 minutes to write, and that'll leave us with a little bit of time for sharing of what we've written. So let me go ahead and set my timer for 10 minutes, and then I will get some of the research links up, and I'll put the link to Revisionary Arts up again too, in case I didn't do that earlier. And if anybody wants me to go back to the poem, let me know, and I will happily go back to the poem as well. Jessica, I hope this is okay. I mean, I could get you citations from a bibliography that I have on my hard drive, but I'm just going to go ahead and give you the info directly from the slides. You should be able to easily find the studies in like PubMed or some comparable database. Happy writing, everyone. We can take about 2 more minutes for the writing if you need it, but if nobody needs it, we can wrap up in 30 seconds. Let me know. Everybody's good? Well, if you were like me, you might have spent too much time on the self you've left behind. And that's okay, because if you did, it might just mean that you really need to leave that self behind, or you really want to, or you're really trying. And so I'm going to say that's a good thing. Unfortunately, I didn't spend enough time giving myself instructions for the journey, but I think I got far enough. Would anybody like to share? It's certainly not mandatory, but I'm going to stop sharing my screen if that's okay, so that we can see each other a little bit better. Rocky, I think I saw your hand go up. Please, yes, unmute and share. Hannah, you'll be next. Thank you. Let me see if I can unmute you. Oh, I bet Stacy can unmute you, Rocky.
There I am.
There you are. Perfect.
Okay. The way I read this is, once again, it's how I see where I've been and what I've left. When you leave somewhere you didn't want to be and felt in danger, when you first get to war, to Vietnam, and you go there, and you didn't really want to be there, but there you are, and you're in danger all the time, and you feel like you've grown an extra layer of skin, protection or denial, or however you perceive that, something that will protect you and get you through. And then when you come home, you're leaving that skin behind. It sheds, and you get in the plane and you head back. It's a part of your life after coming home from a hostile environment. So my instructions for that person would be prepared to change, expect to be different, expect to face challenges from others in this process. Try to envision the person you are becoming. Accepting that you are a new person may be difficult at first.
Yes, isn't that the case always? Thank you so much for sharing that wisdom for that person who's undergoing any significant change in life. Yeah, that was fantastic. Thank you. Thank you,
You're welcome.
Rocky. Hannah, I saw your hand go up.
Oh, one sec. I was bound by painful civil restriction. I was socially acceptable, voice restrained for them, language what they crafted for me, their regulated thoughts, the poisoned well they slaked me from. They had a hand in everything. I was always on the clock. Let them see me feral. I've broken their breaking rules and built mine from the dust and rubble into a new home among young trees and stones. I'm centered on caring about living, better living, gentler living, for you and the new me, without the pain of the wrongs they said were right.
It's a powerful piece. Let them see me feral. Ooh, I love that transition. Oh, that was fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Wow. Yeah, it's amazing what those creative writers can do in 8 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Hannah is a creative writing major, so I thought I'd let everyone know that. Everyone would still feel okay sharing. That was beautiful, Hannah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Matthew, thanks.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can. Great. Thank you.
My former contentment was ready for pain. Now I find a new meaning for tired again and again. The pain reminds me that I'm still alive again and again until I'm content again.
Mm. Wow, that's powerful. Doesn't have to be long to be powerful.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was beautiful. The pain reminds me that I'm alive. I have a really, really intense poem about pain that I would love to share with you. If you send me an email, I'm happy to share it with you. If anybody wants this poem, I'm happy to share it with you. If anyone suffers from pain, I cannot remember the name of the author right now, but it's a poem that I have in a database of mine for the poetry pharmacy. So feel free to send me an email and I'll send you the pain poem. Really powerful. Thank you for sharing.
Very good.
Well, I can share if nobody else wants to share. Stacy, did you just unmute?
Yeah, I was just gonna do a couple of, I
Okay,
did way too many
great.
lines.
You did wait. No, there is no such. Come on.
Positive thoughts to push out the angry gremlins. Look to peaceful pursuits. Communing with happy, peace-seeking individuals adds to happy times. Create opportunities to find peace and happiness. Can you see peace is like my major theme right now? Spend less time in anger and frustration. Eradicate it. What adds to happy bucket? Add that to your calendar of events. Pause. Look behind you. Smile. Track. And thank the universe and work hard for health, but don't allow it to rule all things. So,
I have to say, opening with happy gremlin or angry gremlins was such a great opening. It really was. And I thought, I've never called them that before, but I probably should have because I'd sound a lot friendlier if I did. I love it. Or angry gremlins and the happy bucket. So wanted to differentiate between. I love it. That was great. You found some great language in there. Thank you, Stacy. Yeah, my first list just opened with the angry self, the self that I was shedding. So that's as soon as you said angry gremlins, I was like, that sounds so much friendly, honestly. Than just the angry self, and then 10 different iterations of the angry self, which is not the part I would share with you if no one else is going to share. I'm only going to share the other part. Would someone else like to share? Kathleen.
Sure, I will. It's funny how you write so much and then you realize you don't really have much and then you rewrite it. But
isn't that the great thing about poetry though? Because I mean, as Matthew already demonstrated, and as that opening poem by James Wright already demonstrated, you only need like 5 lines and it's already a poem. So that's the beautiful thing. If you write something and you want to get rid of 75% of it, that's what you have left as a poem. So
right, there we go. Right, instead of a book.
Exactly.
I started with who did I leave behind when she was lost before I fully knew her, masquerading in bravery, yet the awareness only awakening from the tugging of my lost self, seeking to be found, eager to reunite into wholeness, halted from the time and space from my grief and loss.
Kathleen, that was beautiful. That was a beautifully composed poem. So I think what happened was you chopped off and edited away everything you didn't need, and you left something really profoundly insightful behind and beautiful. Wow, thank you for sharing that. I know everyone is really fantastic.
And we have did a good job when we're tapping inside.
Wow.
I think I saw Yvonne's hand go up, and then Jessica wrote one in the
Jessica
chat.
posted in the chat. And Jessica, if you don't want to unmic, do you mind if I read it? Is that okay? Jessica says, keeping her unseen, the girl in the shadows, bound by screaming insecurities, never letting anyone close. Head high down the halls, path guided by authenticity, peeling yourself off the walls. Get naked and ready to be seen. There is strength in vulnerability. I love the two parts of that. Yeah, I love seeing it on the page because it's so easy for us to see that line of demarcation between the self that you're shedding and the instructions that you're giving your future self. That is so vulnerable and brave and beautiful. Thank you. I love that. I love the line, peeling yourself off the walls. Really fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yvonne, was your hand up? Did you put your hand up before I read that? Yes, please. Thank you again, Jessica.
New at this, so just want to put it out there. Okay, so instructions for the journey. Stop standing still, waiting for the ground underneath me to carry me forward. I can't breathe. My feet are stuck like glue, but lift one foot at a time while facing the horizon. Walk onward. Don't look down. Don't look back. This journey is moving, even if I, a statue, pretend time has no impact. Even still, in time, I will be changed.
Wow.
So many great lines in there. I love the feet stuck like glue and the statue. I mean, so many images of static,
Yeah.
like the ice, right? Like the ice. Oh, that was beautiful, Yvonne. Thank you.
Yeah, there
Thank
was
you.
a lot of visuals in that, a lot of things you can just put your eyes right on and see the struggle, see getting your feet up, see moving them forward. That was great.
So much powerful imagery.
So much effort. Yeah.
So much imagery. Yeah, that was beautiful.
Wow.
Well, would anybody else like to share before we wrap up? I mean, that was so moving, so beautiful. And I'm just thrilled at how many people came tonight and how many people were willing to share. Because this can be really awkward. It can be uncomfortable. And poetry teaches us how to sit with uncertainty and discomfort, right? So I promise I always try to make jokes and make it as bearable and enjoyable for everyone as possible. So yeah, just thank you so much for coming. And, you know, if this was even remotely appealing to you, Revisionary Arts is here for you the third Saturday of every month. We have a large group of regulars that cycle in and out, but we always have new people coming in. So whenever you're free on a third Saturday at 1 p.m., don't hesitate to jump in. You can keep your camera off if you don't feel comfortable.
At what time?
It's at 1 p.m. 1 p.m. on the third Saturday of every month. And if you go to that link that I gave you, revisionaryarts.org, just go to the workshop tab and the link that you need is right there. It's right there. And so it'll be the same link for the rest of the year. We change it every year in January. And then I will add the new link to the new page in the new year. So, and I got out of it. I don't have to read my poem tonight.
Jocelyn did just add hers to the chat.
Oh, you did, Jocelyn? Should we end with yours then? I think we should. Jocelyn, would you like me to read it for you? I think that's a yes. Okay. Yes, I would like to. Thank you. Lived life in darkness, only a moment to see the light, clawed and scratched to get out of this shell. Now that I broke out, it's time to ignite to be the morning star.
Wow.
Ooh, what a beautiful note to end on. Thank you so much. I knew that you'd just come from physical therapy and you probably weren't going to turn your camera on. So thank you so much for putting that in the chat room. That's a beautiful one. I love the shell. I love the shell breaking out of it and igniting to be the morning star. Great stuff, everybody. Also, when you go to the Revisionary Arts website, if you want to check out the Poetry Pharmacy, a lot of the poems have been recorded. So I've read them and you can find the text of them. There's lots of different categories in the Poetry Pharmacy. If you would like me to show you that right now, I'm happy to do so. If you've got a minute, it seems like everybody's still in the Zoom room for the most part. So here's the Revisionary Arts website. that's the tab you're going to click on for the third Saturday workshop. You'll click on that, and then all you have to do is click right there to access the workshop. But if you, on your own time, would like to go to the Poetic Prescriptions page, you will see that we have a little pharmacy of poetry here, what we call Poetic Prescriptions. And these are the 6 categories that we have poems in right now. There's about 4 poems per category. If you want to hear me read them, you can click on the audio. If you just want to sort of sit with the poems, look at them, read them yourself, you can also do that. I mean, that's a great way to get a small dose of poetry every week, and maybe to get a poem for what you're feeling you need. Maybe you need some gratitude one week because you've lost your gratitude compass, or maybe you need some hope, or maybe you need to be reminded how resilient you are. So that's how these poems are curated. They're curated with those needs in mind. And so it's possible that you could find exactly what you're looking for. If you're ever in Banner Hospital, that's what they look like in Banner Hospital. They actually come in little pill bottles, but on the web is just as good. So I encourage everybody to use that. It's a free resource, and it's work that I love doing. So thank you again so much, everybody, for your participation, your vulnerability, your unbelievably beautiful words.